Hello and welcome back to Titan Academy. In this video, we will cover options for debugging your Titan projects. We will show how to debug using Titan tools and also how to debug using browser inspection tools such as those in Chrome. Okay, so here is an example of a project, a very simple one. We have one table, a power table that brings in a list of accounts, and we have a field, an image, and a button. This table is just a simple power table bringing in a list of accounts, and these two elements, the text field and the image field, are hidden on load. So under interactivity, hide on load. For any element, if you select the element, go to the gear and go to conditions. In the conditions, you can see that it lists out rules and actions that affect this element. For example, our text field affected by home, that's the name of the page. It's affected by a button, and it is affected by an action rule within that button. That's this button right here. Now let's say we add something like another field, for example, an email field, and we put a condition on this email field. If email field contains demo, then let's affect an element and find my text field, set the value to 123, something silly like this. Now, if we go back to the text field and look at the conditions again, we can see that it now shows that it's impacted by rule number 1 on an email field, and it affects the set value. From this menu, if you click the little gear, you can go directly to the action that is affecting the element. For example, if I click the gear on here, this opens up rule number 1. That's the rule from that button. Let's see what we're doing. When that button is clicked, we are showing the text field and showing the image, and then we are also running a Salesforce action to refresh our power table. We also have a similar tool available on the Salesforce elements. Let's have a look. Click the gear icon here, go to Salesforce, and let's just pick any of these. For example, the get for the power table. If we go ahead and click edit, we can see by clicking on where used, where this Salesforce get is called. From here, we can see that this is invoked in 3 places. Let's pick one of these from the get, for example, the account get for the power table. Go ahead and click edit and click on the where used link. You can see where this is invoked. It's invoked in 2 places. Number 1, it's invoked on the rule that was automatically created when we created the power table. This runs each time the page is loaded. And secondly, it is invoked from that button, from action number 1. And again, click on the little gear. That'll take you directly into the action where it's used. Here we're affecting our element, we're showing our fields, and then we are running that Salesforce action. So those are a couple of tips on how to debug and trace things from within a Titan project. Now let's take a look at our debugging tools that we can use when previewing the project in a browser. From the menu, select the Tools option and turn on Debug mode. When this is enabled, it will allow you to use the debugging tools when you are previewing the project. Once a project is published, you cannot use the debugging tools from the published page. That's only available for preview. Now, I will preview my project. I'm using Google Chrome. In Chrome, when the preview is open, right-click anywhere on the page and click Inspect. Other browsers are going to have similar tools that are accessed in a similar manner as this. From here, I will go into the console view, and I'll run the page again, refresh it, and watch what happens. Now in the console, when we take an action, we can see what's going on. For example, I'll click the button to show the text field and the image. And you see that we've gotten some feedback here in the Chrome debugging console. This shows that we have run a rule, it's called unnamed. We've run a node called input, we've run a node called affected elements, and we've run a node called Salesforce action. So how can we use this information? You'll notice in here that these elements have some kind of generic names, like unnamed, input, affected element, Salesforce action. Something that you can do to make this a little bit easier to debug and navigate later is to give your rules and nodes a metadata name. So if I'm in the builder, go to my button and go to the actions. First off, let's give this rule a name. We'll rename it and call it show fields and refresh table. And on this affected elements node, we can give this a metadata tag. We'll call it show fields. And on the Salesforce action, same thing. We can give it a tag. We can call this refresh account table. I'll apply this. I save it. And let's go ahead and refresh my page. Now, if I click the button again, the rule is run, but we've gotten some better feedback. So we got run rule, show fields, and refresh table. We now know which rule that was. We ran an input node, we ran an affected elements node, the show fields, we ran a Salesforce action called refresh account table. Also notice here that we've got this ID on the custom action Salesforce get. You can use this information to find that specific element within Titan. So we know this is a Salesforce get. Let's just copy this. I'll copy that text, and if we come back into the Titan builder and go to Salesforce and search, paste that ID, and it brings up the associated Salesforce action. Here we just have just a couple of gets, but in a bigger project, you might have dozens of gets and pushes, and you can use that information that you find right here within the browser inspected debugging tools to find the specific action that ran. If you disable debug mode, if in Titan this is turned off, you will not see any feedback in the console. So that is something to keep in mind. Be sure that this is enabled when you are debugging your projects in Titan. Now let's take a look at the network tab in the console inspector. You can also use this to see what's going on in your Titan projects. So I'll just reload the page, and you can see what's going on within the network tab. If you look at the SF mapping node here, that is our integration with Salesforce. If we click on it, it will show you some feedback in the response tab as to what happened. If the status is success, that means that it worked and we retrieved data or pushed data as we expected. There's all other kinds of good information in here as well. You can see in this line right here that it is working on power table widget with ID E15. Let's say we have several power tables and we don't know which one this is. If you just select this and copy it in Titan Builder, if you search for an element, if you search for it by its ID, it will come up, and it's this power table right here. Very easy. You can also see within the network response the results that we got. For example, this query returns 20 account IDs. You see the list of IDs there. Here you see a hash value that's in a hidden column. In this next section of data, you see the account names that were returned. This next one here is the value and the account type field, and so on. So this is very useful for debugging information that's returned from Salesforce. Finally, if you look in the payload, you can see, if you expand this, any parameters that have been set for the query. In this example, we did not set any, so they're empty. But if you had set any kind of parameters for the query from Salesforce, you would see them in here. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are some basic tips for debugging tools that are available within Titan. Thanks for watching.